everyone. You're very welcome to our panel discussion on innovation and enterprise development at Tangent, Trinity's Ideas Workspace. This evening we are joined by four esteemed alumni who will share their unique tales of adult education and their journeys since graduating. And Gemma, you were just saying that you did the course entirely online.
Yes.
It's circumstantial.
Yes, during COVID.
Yeah, and how was that? Was that like a welcome distraction from what was happening outside, or?
Yeah, it was good. It was, I think for us, it worked. It's obviously very different when you do something online. You have to adjust to a different medium than if you were in the room and you were with everybody and you had whiteboards and post-its and, you know, all this was happening. But I think we found an in-between, and the system that once we got used to using Blackboard, TCD system and everything else like that, we were able to find our way through it. And then we were meeting at, you know, outside the hours. Our projects were meeting outside. So we just kind of made it work. You know, and it was great. In fairness, it's great to have it coming right into your room. You don't have to travel. You don't have to do all of that. So, you know, we made it work. I'm sure it was different, though, for those who were teaching, especially. They probably felt the difference. But yeah, it worked. Wouldn't have been able to do it otherwise. So, you know, that's the other thing. And I wouldn't have wanted that. So.
Absolutely. And, you know, but we are all enjoying the return to, well, I think my education colleagues return to in-person teaching, and even now there's a class going on next door and I can hear them, and they're fierce animated for this hour on a Monday, but it's lovely to hear, you know, with this next intake people will also get to study from home as well, so there's a nice mix, so the best of both worlds. So we'll just give people a few more minutes to join and get settled. So you're all very welcome once again to this panel discussion on innovation and enterprise development at Tangent, Trinity's Ideas Workspace. We are the only area in Trinity who offer regional education, and for the first time this course will run in Kildare. So we're targeting Kildare, Wicklow and Meath with a Kildare intake of this class, with in-person teaching happening both online and in Merritts in County Kildare. And we will also be running our traditional Dublin intake, where you will study here at Trinity on its famous historied campus, and then you'll also be able to take some classes online also. So the course closing date is the 8th of November, which is rapidly approaching. And I'd like to make people aware that in a change to springboard recruitment, places will be offered on a rolling basis this time around. And you can expect to hear within about a week and a half if your application has been successful. So not too long to wait. But as a result of that change, early application is advised to avoid disappointment and give yourself the best chance of getting a place. So I'd like to begin. So you're all very welcome to our alumni panel discussion this evening. My name is Hazel and I will be your host. If you have any questions which are course specific, please do hold them till the end of the session. We are fortunate enough to be joined by the Senior Programme Manager for Tangent Education, that is Rosemary Denneher. And between myself, Rosemary and our panel, we'll hope to answer any of your queries or concerns you might have. And please do feel free to pop them into the chat box. So firstly, I'd like to go around our virtual room here this evening to learn a bit more about our panel. So we are joined by Marie Clune, Anna Rooney, Colum Buckley, and Gemma O'Halloran. And I might begin with yourself, Gemma. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Good evening, everyone. Thanks a million, Hazel, for having me here this evening. So hi, I am the owner of FreeStyle PM, which is a project management service for SMEs. And basically, I solve a lot of problems. I'm the person people come to go, I have this idea, I want to make it happen, but I don't know how to make it happen, and I don't have this, and I don't have that, and I don't have this. or I had this strategy or this, and I need to get this done by the end of the year, but I've forgotten about it for 6 months and now I need to get it done, or, you know, those kind of things come to me. Or I have this problem, I can't get anything done because it's in my way. Can you just sort it for me, please? They're the kind of conversations I have on a fairly regular basis. So I started my own business about 7 years ago. First off, it was an events management business because that was my core competency at the time. And for 5 years, all was great until the 6th of March 2020, when my business kind of went poof overnight, and I had to make some decisions about what I was going to do. And being me, I decided, well, hell no, I'm not going to lose my business. And I adapted and set up a second business using the same skill set, but to help businesses organize themselves and to get things done. So as of 2022, I've merged these two businesses together. And actually, this course was instrumental in helping me to do so. I used the course as a way for me to test everything that I wanted to do with the business and to take all my learnings and everything that I had learned over, 7 years nearly at that point in time, and to figure out exactly how I was going to create this absolutely smashing business that was going to work on every level for me. So my background's in science. I did my degree in Trinity actually in science and went on to Queen's to do a master's, and then over time, here and there, I ended up doing event management, and that landed me in an international company where I was their European events manager, and I worked on everything from 30 country lecture tours to diplomatic missions to farm tours to technical science seminars to God knows what. Every day you didn't know what would be landed on your desk. So I got very used to having to be very innovative, creative, and quite frankly, try and stay calm in the midst of chaos in a very dynamic environment. And I suppose after a while, after 8 years or so of working nationally and internationally on events up to the size of the Olympics, I said, right, I'm going to go solo. And I did. So that's kind of my background. I hope I didn't go too long for you, but that's the background that got me to the door of this course.
Very good, very good. Thank you so much for that, Gemma. And Anna, I might move to yourself next.
Hi, it's very nice to be here today. So thank you very much for inviting me. My story, I guess, not quite similar to what we heard right now. And yeah, self-employed for many, many years, since 2000, and have been mostly in consultancy and learning and development space. I work with private companies, local enterprise boards, working with SMEs and startups. And that brought me to, it was between private companies and community development companies. So I was very much involved in community on the ground level, and I absolutely loved it. I don't know if anybody heard of Peace 3 programs. So I did a lot of work in cross-border projects. And again, I loved it so much. So any project that I was involved with, I was working with people. And when COVID happened, the same story as yours, Gemma. Literally, I was in hospitality sector then. And again, it wasn't exactly overnight, because I had to stay on for another couple of months, you know, to help out with all the chaos that was created by this. But I knew in my head that, you know, I'd love to do something slightly different that I'm doing now. And I always wanted to go into the coaching space. But to do that, I already kind of signed up for Trinity, and then I was thinking of Kingston College to go there. So I merged the two. As soon as I finished one, it brought me to the next level. And the same as you, Gemma, I put all my thoughts through all my project through this, and I went through design thinking process. I must say it was chaotic in one sense, but overall it really made sense by the end of it and what I wanted to do. And it gave me the confidence to go this direction, because, you know, we all can be confident in one area or the other, but every now and again, you need that boost, you need something new. And I found that probably the challenging part was to be online. And I almost had fear of that because I never had it done before. And I'd say just because I did the course, it kind of helped me now to stay in business, because I was very near to close everything down. But the confidence I got from the group, from people, from teachers, you know, learning new skills and different way of communicating, it all helped me where I am today. So thank you very much. And I highly recommend.
Thank you, Anna. We haven't even got to the meat of the questions, and already there is glowing praise coming from our panel. Colum, no pressure now, but you're up next.
Yeah, Colum Buckley is my name, and thanks for having me this evening, and welcome everybody. I suppose, look, my own story probably dates way back, I've always been kind of stuck in telecoms. That's kind of morphed itself into cybersecurity, kind of cloud computing, etc. And I guess would have started work in the UK way back in the late 90s, working on their equivalent of the national broadband scheme way back then. That would have led me to Ireland, where I would have worked with the likes of ENET in the early days, then on to Strencom. Strencom would have been an ISP, and I'm currently with a company called Entegro. And I guess I'm kind of gone full circle in terms of building and designing networks. And I guess in the midst of all of that, I would have kind of done a master's degree on from accounting and computer programming way back in the early days of college. Did an MBA in Henley Business School way back in 2016. And I thought to myself, I suppose, look, there was always some little piece of the jigsaw missing. And I think, to be fair to Tangent, to this particular program, especially around innovation and I suppose just those finer bits of kind of design thinking and strategic thinking, this was a fantastic course to kind of, I suppose, get those elements to the fore, because while we were involved in telecoms and cloud computing, and that whole space was an explosion of work for us. So I guess we were lucky in that sense. We were actually, we had to innovate. We had to think on our feet, because we had hundreds of thousands of clients and end users that relied on us. So I suppose it was really interesting from that point of view. And certainly this course gave some, I suppose, fantastic insight into how to innovate quickly and how to do it in a very constructive way. And if you're going to fail at it, fail fast and move on to the next item. So I think that was a really good learning lesson for me, specifically coming out of this course, because not everything you do will be 100% of a success, but if you're going to fail fast and move on to the next item. So I think that was a big lesson from this course. And I think it really took the subjectivity out of what we were actually doing, because everything was attributed to the real world scenario where we were given real businesses to actually work on. And I suppose in many respects, it kind of felt like The Apprentice, it was that way inclined. So it really worked it. So certainly worth investing the time and effort into this particular course.
Very good, Colum. And Marie.
Thanks, Hazel, and thanks for inviting me this evening. And I'm glad to be here. And I hope I can help encourage people to take the leap of faith and choose this course. I suppose a bit like Colum, I started out in IT many years ago, and I suppose my main discipline is in program management, or project management as it was better known then. And I stayed with the one company for many years and got lots of different experience, but across multiple different departments. So would have worked in areas like localization, IT, customer care, call centers, tech support, renewals, the whole gambit. I kind of saw the end-to-end life cycle of the customer experience within a software company, and that software company actually was in the cybersecurity space. So it was a very interesting place to be. Now, the funny thing about me is that I actually left that job, took a leap of faith years ago to set up my own business, hadn't a clue what I was doing. Had I attended this course, it would have been wonderful at the time. But I think I went in with a degree of, I don't know, threw caution to the wind and went for it. I was going after an area that I wanted to work in for years, which was interior design. And I had done various interior design courses and managed to break into the business. And it was quite successful until, of course, the Celtic Tiger came and put an end to it. And at that point, I actually ended up going back to the company that I had previously worked for. And it was going great until February 2020. And in my case, it wasn't a COVID story. It was our company was acquired by a much larger company, and my role was made redundant. And I think, you cruise through life and you think that it'll never happen to you, and then it does. And you realize I'm not relevant anymore. I was finding it very difficult well, I suppose COVID did coincide with me being laid off, but trying to find employment, I found it extremely difficult. And at the back of my mind, I had the niggle of, I'm female, I'm over a certain age. I did feel kind of irrelevant. I felt that my skill set, while my experience was good, my skill set maybe was a bit tired, a bit stale. All of my achievements I felt were acquired organically. I grew within the company based on, I suppose, performance. And when this course came up, it spoke to me because I felt that it would fill the gap that I lacked. To put, I suppose, formality around the skill sets that I felt maybe that I hadn't developed formally. I couldn't verbalize them. I was doing things logically, but not following any kind of set pattern. So it gave me real skills, and I honestly believe that this course not only, I mean, it kind of helped on two levels. It gave me the practical skills and, you know, the opportunity to apply those skills. Because to be honest with you, I always knew I was going to go back and try and work in IT again. But it also gave me the emotional skills and the confidence to be able to get back out there and make a difference. And even the approach to interviewing in the aftermath, I felt because of the course had influenced me, and I don't know, gave me that bit of confidence that I needed to keep trying. And I have to say, even after doing the course, yeah, lots of setbacks. I mean, I only started this year in April with Dell. So yeah, it's a long journey, but this course certainly made a positive impact for sure.
Excellent. Thank you, each of you, for sharing your unique journeys. Fascinating, and like, we're lucky to have such a diverse bunch in the group here. So bear with me there for 1 minute. Now, so just to ask you all next. You know, I think people have certain ideas and potentially misgivings, and there are certain myths around adult education and the sort of person who might pursue adult education. And some of those myths can actually be damaging, and they can prevent people from applying. They think, you know, maybe it's not for me. I know, Gemma, you mentioned that you've been to Trinity before, but people may even be put off by the idea of studying at Trinity, you know, and certainly we would see a lot of people signing up to this course under our recognition of prior learning scheme, whereby they may not have ever gone to third level. So are there any kind of myths, or did you have any misconceptions around studying at Tangent or even returning to education before you started with us? And what did you find kind of most surprising about the course? So 2 questions in one there, and I might start with yourself, Anna.
Well, my daughter was already in Trinity. I think I had to ask her. I said, would you mind if I apply to Trinity? We had a bit of a laugh. I think my main question was, will I manage online? Because I did my master's in UL in 2012, 2014, and it was full on. Every day you go in, like if you go to work. And I'm the type of person that if I want to get something done, I will start and finish. It's long-term study probably wouldn't work with me. And that's why I was thinking, can I be disciplined enough to be on time with everything, you know, because life takes over, and it was a lot going on between kids, COVID, whatever else was coming at us. We had to readjust. So those questions were coming to me. And then the next thing, technology. Can I manage all of this? And I have to say that it's because I did the course, and all those questions were, and the confidence, I think we all spoke about the confidence part. It definitely helped me to reinvent what I was doing before. And now I'd say 90% of my clients are online. So I can't even imagine, how did I do business before, driving and meeting and all of that. Now it's so easy. And another thing that added to the business that I'm in now, that I can actually work with clients from all over the world. So, and I can work from clients in any county in Ireland. So it's not like thinking about the distance and, you know, all other things that come into it, and the cost as well, especially now. So there was huge advantage of me doing this, along with the confidence and the product development. I think, Colum, you mentioned the innovation. It's absolutely right, because I had one idea at the start. By the time we finished, it was very different. Now, the core, I'd say, value and what I wanted to achieve, it was still there, but the product definitely was different. And that's why I have to say that I am delighted that I did finish it. I was delighted that I enrolled, and incredible people that I met through the course. It just, I can't even put value on that one. So, and made great friends. One thing I'd say about the mixed group, and we had a lot of people, mature students, but we had students that just finished their course. And I found that the mix of generational mix, it was very, very strong in our course. And we've learned so much from younger participants. And I hope they learned something from us, but I thought it was a big take for me, even to understand, you know, how they think and get their advice on what you're thinking of doing. So overall, it was a great experience, and I've learned a lot from it. And I learn a lot from the course. The content, it's a one thing, but the ideas that others could give you, or the absolute 100% honest feedback, because not many could do that. And here your idea is on the table, and they're literally taking it apart, then we're putting it back together. And while you're in that process or in breakout rooms, you're literally coming up with something new. And it was incredible. So that's my take from it.
So lovely to hear. And we haven't put her up to it, guys. That's all off the cuff from Anna. So thanks so much for that, Anna. And really encouraging to get that feedback. So thank you for that. And something that I hear anecdotally students find surprising, or certainly people who come to events like this, is that you don't actually need a business idea before you embark on one of these programs. And you mentioned your ideas being kind of lovingly examined, shall we say, by your peers during class time. And you're all the better for it. But Colum, when you started this course, did you come to the table with an idea that you wanted to work on? Or you know, what position, where were you coming from?
I didn't have an idea as such, but I had probably a few things in the back of my mind. All right, I tell you, if I'm being totally honest, it was almost a loose end during COVID, and I was kind of thinking, what would I do? And it was pure selfish reasons from an aesthetics point of view. I just thought to myself, springboard with the grant, and basically being able to attend Trinity and do a postgrad, it would look good on the CV. And to be quite honest, that's basically why I just thought initially this would be really good. And based on the program detail that we got out, I was kind of looking at this thinking, do you know what, I can use a lot of material that I did, you know, from the masters a number of years previous to be able to kind of run through some of the course, etc. But little did I find that was completely blown out of the water when I actually started doing the course. So it was basically turning itself on its head and finding a solution and something to work on pretty quickly. And the course kind of immerses you into a different frame of mind and a different way of thinking. And I suppose where it's led me to now is actually, I suppose, in using my own background from a telecoms and cybersecurity point of view to investing in a global business from an SD-WAN point of view, which is the latest technology from a software-defined networking point of view. And in a couple of years' time, that will, and I can kind of visualize this now, basically, that this is going to be a successful business. And I think there's, it's probably a year on the go now at this stage. And I think working its way through I suppose the subjectivity, or removing the subjectivity, I should say, from, you know, the real world to what is actually a real example, you know, made it so easy to be able to have the confidence, number one, to go and invest in the business, I suppose, interrogate the people that you're investing with, knowing what questions to ask, knowing how to dissect, you know, the various markets and what's going to happen. And I suppose just going for it in a very constructive and controlled manner, basically, knowing that you're going to reach probably, you know, certainly 70 or 80% of your end goal, which, you know, there'll always be some 20 or 30% fallout, whatever that would be, I don't know. But so I guess that's kind of my journey in terms of, I actually had no specific goal. It was more the aesthetics reason.
Yeah.
Next thing I actually saw what was going on, and I thought, hang on a second, there's some seriously real value to be had here, and turned that into an investment opportunity, which is which is just going from strength to strength, you know. So it's really been powerful in terms of, I suppose, what it's done for me in terms of my own thinking. You know, it's brought a new emphasis to what we kind of should be doing, as opposed to what we actually do on a day-to-day basis, you know. So I think it's really kind of it's really, I suppose, put the cat amongst the pigeons, for want of a better way of describing it, you know.
Very good, very good. Thank you, Colum. And yeah, you're right. I mean, people may not expect to see Trinity offering Springboard courses. We are the only Springboard course provider around campus. So I'm just quickly shooting a look over to Rosemary to check. Is she going to give you the nod? Yeah, she's giving me the nod. And I mean, it's €300. So that's, you know, if you're eligible and you're in employment, €300 is not much at all, really, you know. For what you described, Colum, you make it sound like kind of a finishing school almost for ideas, or for people who have any kind of an entrepreneurial spark in them, or entrepreneurial in your case. So thank you very much for that. And then I might move on to Gemma, yourself next. Just you know, Colum has spoken about some of the kind of the principles and the frameworks that this course introduces, and how you might apply them, you know, and how he found them so practical in his own line of work. So what might the application of the kind of methodologies around kind of design thinking and new ways of thinking, how might their application look in your line of work, which is obviously very distinct from Colum's?
Yes, it's very interesting, because I think when you go into this course, you're learning the methodology in an objective way. I think that's been mentioned. You know, it's not specific to one particular sector, industry, or work type. You're going into it and you're getting these projects like real life companies ultimately, and especially in the first module, which is the innovation module. And that's a big module. Okay, that one is one big module. You put in a lot of hours on it, and it's the very first one. So you're just getting used, you're finding your feet in the course at the same time. And it's absolutely amazing how often I now see design thinking in everything I do. And Marie, I think you mentioned how you were putting, you know, you might have been doing it organically, you might have had an idea about it, you might have had some experience of it, but then you wanted to learn the methodology to say, I officially know what design thinking is and what the actual steps are. And that gives a great deal of confidence and credibility when you can talk about it. But I am bowled over by how much I see it in everyday life, and we don't even recognize it for what it is sometimes. It could be how a supermarket is organized, it could be a new marketing campaign for somebody, it could be a new strategy, it could be reviewing an existing process, it could be looking at the space inside a retail environment. I remember there was a great example in the innovation where they were talking about toilets and how all the older people kept gravitating towards the toilets in an airport. And the trainer, Nick was our trainer, and he was telling us, why do you think they do that? So the people had to go and find out why this was happening. And, you know, everybody guessed at what they thought it was, and any number of different guesses came up and all the rest of it. And maybe you want to think about this yourself if you're listening and you're going, I'm in an airport, why would I go into the bathrooms more often? Older people, no, it was because it was easier to hear the speakers and the announcements in there than it was in the main airport. So then they went off and they tried to sort out their speaker system and everything, and they realized why the queues were now no longer so long in the toilets. Innovation is everywhere. It's a way of thinking. It's a mindset. Every client I work with, I apply what I do. I don't necessarily do the whole process. A full design thinking process is probably more robust, and it's kind of a very specialized area, but at least the thought process and the methodology pops up in everything that we're doing, and if you can apply that as you go along. So I'm using it every day in my job. I'm a project manager. I'm a bit of an odd one because I can come up with ideas, I can refine ideas, I can plan out what needs to be done, I'll create a strategy, plan it out, and then execute it and deliver the results in the project that we want, and then evaluate it and go back to the beginning again, you know. So I'm constantly in a process of moving from one to the other. And what's really interesting about this course is innovation on one hand and enterprise development on the other. Ideas are one thing, creating ideas, developing, validating your ideas, testing assumptions, and going through that entire process that siphons it down from a problem to a solution and a prototype or whatever it is, whether it's a physical something or whether it's a thought or an idea. Enterprise development sits side by side with that, because you can't take that idea into a business environment and have a successful business unless you then at a certain point start to apply business methodologies to it and business wisdom to it. So it's actually incredibly important to have the two of them side by side. And again, that comes up a great deal in the work I'm doing. And it was why this course for me was just, my jaw dropped when I found it, I have to say, because I read it and went, oh my God, where have you been all my life? You know, it was just everything I needed in one unit, because it was looking at both sides. And innovation really in my world hadn't been identified as like a real subject. I knew people who were creative. I worked with very entrepreneurial people and they were constantly generating ideas, but innovation in and of itself had not been mentioned to me as anything. And I was like, innovation project management, this is it. This is the frontier of project management. This is where I want to be. But side by side with that came, this is what businesses need. And I'm absolutely fascinated and hugely supportive of the SME industry, the world in Ireland, the sector, and I really want to see them succeed. And it doesn't happen without innovation. Innovation is what got us through COVID. Innovation is what gets us in to get our strategies out there. Innovation is what gets us future proofing, whether it's sustainability or anything else that pops up over the coming decades. But it has to sit side by side with good business and enterprise development. So for me, everything that was in the course, be it in small amounts or up to the full process, really shows up a lot in a lot of the work I do. And I work with a lot of different people. I don't work in one specific sector. So I'm working with an investment group. I worked with brewing and distilling. I worked with a professional services group, then with recruitment. You know, it's all over the place, but it applies universally. That's my experience anyway.
Excellent. Anyone else anything to add to that?
I'd add to it. Gemma, you were talking about design thinking being everywhere. And the funny thing is, in Dell, I actually work in the telecom space. And I suppose my role involves bridging the business with what IT can deliver from a telecoms point of view, and particularly within interactive voice response systems. And that whole world is brand new to me. But the design thinking piece and problem solving piece comes into it so often. We're also working with AI and looking at how, a customer problem in a telephone menu can be solved using a combination of different technologies. And that's all well and good for us to understand it on the IT side. But to be able to translate that back with the business and also work with the business to break the problem down and understand the customer journey and understand the outcomes and what it is you want to ultimately achieve, and have all that kind of, I suppose, backed up with data to make sure that, whatever changes are being made are valid and successful. Yeah, that's all I live and breathe. And it's like Gemma was saying, I probably did this organically before, but now I can see the process end to end and understand, I suppose, from a customer point of view, and especially from a human-centered design thinking point of view, how everything we're doing, you can't do it unless that process is in place. And, it's great to feel that I learned this on this course, and I now am bringing kind of real value to the job that I'm doing. So
brilliant. And actually, Marie, unlike some of our figures here today, you largely pivoted, you know, following this course.
Yeah.
And it's great that you were kind of bringing past experience to bear on your studies with us and some of the work, while you may not have kind of formally had the frameworks or the names for the methodologies. Some of it was coming to you kind of organically, but we hope the course also stretched and challenged you.
Oh, yes.
And can you share a little about that? And,
yeah, and actually, I'd just like to make a comment that, you know, I came into the course, and Colum mentioned this. Yeah, I was a bit kind of, you know, I suppose you have to level set, find yourself in that first module, get comfortable with the whole kind of learning process, being online, getting comfortable with being a student, everything that brings. And I hadn't been a formal student for years, so even the whole kind of referencing method, I was lost in the beginning. And but I was certainly stretched. And you know, I looked at my own situation, and I wondered, how the hell is anybody coping to do this if they're in a full-time job at the same time? Because I was unemployed at the time, and I needed that time because my day job was finding a job. But it is a demanding course, and, you know, be under no illusions. It's not for just, you know, whiling the time away for whatever number of months that it runs, but it's so rewarding. I think one of the things that I would recommend, and I know maybe we touched on this already, is the thing about, do you have a business idea? So I was coming into it, and not from the point of view of setting up my own business. I knew I needed this course to supplement the skills that I already have in, you know, to facilitate my job search. I didn't have a business idea, but I would encourage people coming into the course, start thinking about a relevant business idea. And even though your idea or your concept might change direction a little bit as you move through the course, my advice would be to try and stick with, you know, the main idea you have, because if you change halfway through the course, and some people did, they found that very difficult. So I think that's one bit of advice. The other thing, and it's good to be challenged and to, you know, to be set a challenge. I remember being set that the budget and financial planning challenge. I was like, oh my God, what are we going to do? But you kind of forget, you're a student, you're there to learn, and there are so many resources available to you that, yeah, that everybody had this deep intake of breath going, I'm never going to get this done. But you realize actually the resources are there, that you learn by doing. So no matter how challenging each assignment is, you know, whether it's putting together your individual report to report out on your business and putting your customer personas and journey maps and all that together as part of the process, every step of the way, while you are doing those exercises, and while things might be new to you, you're applying your learning, and in doing it, you're learning. So when you come out the other side, and, you know, you've completed all of the assignments that are due, and the deadlines are pretty tight, and you do have to commit to it and say, right, this is it, I'm going to work at it, and you have to do that. It's worth it. It's all worth it in the end.
Excellent. And look, I think you hit the nail on the head there. It is a level 9 qualification. It is awarded by, you know, the leading university in Ireland for student entrepreneurship, and with that comes a certain level of academic rigor. So you can't sleepwalk through it, but you do get back what you put in. And I've heard that time and again during sessions just like these, and also in context. You know, hopefully you're one of the last intakes for a PG program that has to do it completely online and not by choice. So kind of in context, it's fantastic that, you know, because I think you all studied during a time of kind of rolling closures and restrictions to business as usual and normality. So no mean feat, and certainly commendable. So thanks for that, Marie. And I know as well, a few of you have touched upon it. We're very mindful here that assessments and assignments are not couched in some sort of an academic vacuum with no, real world application. And have any of you any experience of perhaps using your coursework in the real world, or perhaps bringing some of your organizational challenges into an assessment that you would have done here with ourselves?
I'll probably just mention, okay, I have mine printed out here because I printed out all my assignments and they became the backbone of my business. So I was just going to support Marie's point about the business idea. You don't have to have a business idea, but number one, if you do have one, it's better off because that will get you through the whole thing. But number two, you do so many assignments. I'd say like what, 50-60% of the assignments are about your own business or business idea. And if you can, it's of even greater value if you've had a chance to use the assignments for that. Because I literally created a business out of the course. I've had the business, but I created my new business. And believe me when I tell you, in how it operates, in how it was set up, in its foundations, it's significantly stronger than a business I had been operating for 5 years. So, and I'm booked out till next February on projects, and I only started all of this with this in August, so within a month or two of implementing what was in these assignments, I had a sold out business till February. So, it's a case of what you said, what you put into it, you get out of it. And those assignments are not for the faint of heart at times. And you do have to really, I think if you do this course, really, really be willing to, you have to really want to do this course in a way. You have to want something about it that will drive you through and get you through and pull you through some of the more difficult bits, the bits where you're a bit more uncomfortable. Maybe sometimes different people find different things were uncomfortable. Like some people find the group work harder, or some find the budgeting, all that side of things. I love budgets, so I was delighted. But everybody has something they like or dislike more or less, or have more experience of or more or less, and you'll always need a little bit of extra motivation to pull you through those things. So I would say you have to really want to get the result out of this course. I underestimated it at the beginning. I'm going to wholly hold my hand up to it. So, I had done a lot of courses over the years, but I hadn't quite connected the fact it's Trinity and a level 9 with my past experience. And it threw me slightly for a loop at the very beginning, but it became very clear very quickly that if you can work within your group and enjoy that and enjoy the people and ask for help and ask for support, you actually get through it, and it becomes an even better experience because of it, because you went in there and you kind of opened yourself up to the learning process. And then, as I say, these assignments, which are like elevator pitches, what the heck are they? Elevator pitches, budgets, and that big giant last report that you have to do with the Lean Business Model Canvas and the value proposition canvas and all of that. I'm just going back to that every single time. That's the basis, and it's changed a bit, but it's the basis of a really solid business, a business that's stronger than it's ever been for me. And I didn't start out thinking that would be the case, and that's what I got out of the course. And I think for anybody who has a business idea that's either needs to be validated to get started, or you have one and you need to make it better, it's absolutely priceless, because you have accountability. You have these assignments, they have got to be in, they have to be well thought through. You can't just chuck anything out there. You have to really think it. You have to go out there and do customer insight surveys, and you're taught how to do that if you're not comfortable with it, and you have the backup of your team and your everybody to help you. It's great. You don't get that. You don't have that accountability. And, even the best of us who are really good at getting things done, that accountability is massive. And I actually really enjoyed the style of the reports because they really made you think.
I think as well, it gives you, my idea was a completely fictitious idea, but I just went with it and I applied everything to it and followed through with it to the point where, as part of the exercise, I had a discussion with a person from the local enterprise board, and she was actually trying to convince me to go with my idea. So it gives that self-belief and all of the practical assistance, and actually for anybody starting out, wanting to set up their own business, to be able to know, the different types of funding available, where to go, how to avail of it, how to, pitch your idea. And to have this all kind of packaged into methodologies that are formalized for you, like what Gemma was showing there. And I have a folder exactly the same. It's you couldn't to try and do this on your own without going through the formal application of a course in such a condensed time. It's such value, really. So I can't recommend it highly enough. And I know I didn't go ahead with my business idea, but
there's time still.
Tell it to somebody else.
I definitely agree with all the points, and I do use mine also. But I wanted to mention that probably in the area that I work in now is personal development and coaching. I definitely apply quite a few tools that we had to go through ourselves. We had to experience that ourselves. Persona, absolutely, for sure. You have to work through it. And even the questions we ask in that exercise, I can definitely use it in my everyday work now, because every client is different. You have to tailor it to specific needs of that client, to his personality or her personality. So all of that definitely help and strengthen my tools that I used to use before. But the bigger piece for me is the reflection, self-reflection, and leadership. I thought when I was writing those, I literally wrote what I wanted to do straight after the course, straight after Trinity. And I know that if I didn't do that, in fact, we almost were forced to it. And sometimes everybody else had almost the same feedback, how hard it is to do this self-reflection, or how hard it is we have to put this, you literally going inside out to put down on a piece of paper. And when you look at it, then it's the reality. And then your self-responsibility comes to it, and accountability. I think, Gemma, you mentioned there. So what I did, and I highly recommend to anybody who will go into this course, as Marie said, it's not a part-time. You have to allocate time to it, and you have to work through it. There's no point to say that it's only 2 or 3 nights a week. When teamwork starts, you have to collaborate, you have to find time, make sure that everybody is there. And, but the main thing was for me when I wrote those on the leadership and self-reflection, you actually start to think differently. I think that there's no other way of doing this. You just have to do it. You can't quit now, but you're giving yourself a promise, you're building that trust. And working within the group of people that we worked, I think we all know first group was the biggest group, and then we were mixed and matched, but the relationship stayed. So I actually had an accountability partner, which really, really helped. We were kind of pushing each other to be on time, to do it together. If we didn't understand something, even sometimes to read the assignment together, it helped. Because some of the things you have different perception of different things, but here you have somebody else, you can discuss it freely, openly, because they are on the same boat as you are. And I think that was really strong for me. And then the other one, that we kept our groups. We had so many different WhatsApp groups, but we kept it going. Even so, I was in a different groups after that, but every now and again, you go back to your original group, you get their feedback, go back again, or somebody will ask you to help with something. Overall, it was really a great experience and very rewarding by the end of the day, that you have a bunch of people that they're as dedicated as you are, ambitious, or somebody just wanted to be there and they were learning completely different skills. But overall, I found that it's those difficult times, we had a lot of positivity going. We were buzzing. Like it's finished 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, we were still talking. Sometimes we had our extra meetings or team meetings straight after the lectures. And we found it very beneficial in some cases. Even so, you're tired, you're talking all the time, but yet you have something new coming up after lecture sessions. So there are so many different ways of doing it, but definitely keep the communication open. And if you're not afraid to ask, there is always somebody to help you. So that was my experience of that.
Fantastic. And such integrity and enthusiasm in the groups. And we find that now, with even our latest intake, that people are so quick to set up the WhatsApp groups and stay in touch. And I know networking is such a kind of a hackneyed term, when people say do this course and you'll learn how to network, but it's really, you enter into a ready-made community. and then you need them, you know, to bounce ideas off, especially if you're studying completely remotely. I can imagine you needed to kind of engineer that, but it sounded like it really worked well. So thank you, Anna. And Colum, how did you find the group work? Because I know people have different ways of working, and you might think, well, I do enough of that work, group work in my 9 to 5, and now you're taking on additional kind of group work out of hours in undertaking this course. So how did you find the group work?
I think the group work was extremely beneficial for me personally, I suppose, because one thing with the whole personal development journey and your writing and the reflective writing, I suppose it's one thing I would have learned about myself previously, is that I suppose I'm very much a pragmatist, and I need to be talking to people, asking them questions, listening to what they're saying, writing down their answers, looking over what they've told me, and actually, you know, instigating those conversations again to really kind of embed the learning. You know, that the whole theorist way of learning is lost in me. I can't do it. And I suppose that was one of the key items when it came to the actual groups. I think recognizing, you know, the strengths of each person within the group, and actually leveraging the strengths of each person within the group for the best possible outcome. There was a couple of things which I wouldn't have liked to have been doing. Let's say it was the budgeting, for an example. But one of the other guys was really strong at the budgeting side of it. So he actually did the budgeting piece, presented it back to us, and he actually did the coaching on that particular piece.
Okay.
So it's very much leveraging the strengths of each individual within the group to make life as easy as possible. And I suppose that's how we kind of got through the assignments. They're in depth, you know, they need to be detailed. You know, it's real life stuff. There's you can't make it up as such. And I think the whole group scenario, leveraging each other's strengths, was a key part of it. And I think that's where I think that was really beneficial to us, making this course a success, I suppose, not only from just academically and just passing it, but being able to apply real life learning to the real world and actually making a difference day by day in terms of what we're actually doing, you know. So I think that's the key part. And I suppose, look, it was mentioned there, the networking piece, but actually, you know, friends have been made out of the course, and there's nothing better than having a contact somewhere along the line, because I know there's 2 or 3 guys I'm going to be kind of tapping up and saying, listen, hey, how's it going? By the way, do you remember me from this course? This is what I'm doing. And I'll be looking for some inroads and ins, basically, where I can. I just think that's the power of having the group, and you're getting that more of an intrinsic bond with the people you're actually doing the course with, you know, because you're in it together. And the other side of it is there's loads of resources to help you through this outside of the actual themes itself, in terms of the lecturers and the guest speakers, etc. They're all open to giving what they can, you know, in terms of your own learning. So it's key. The groups are key to leverage each other's strengths is the main item there.
Lovely, thank you, Colum. Yeah, and it's that peer-to-peer learning opportunity that then, you know, you can reap the rewards of further on down the tracks. And yeah, that's maybe it's adult education that's uniquely positioned to do just that. I'm getting tongue-tied now at this advanced hour on a Monday evening, but you know, mindful of the diversity of students that we take onto this course. So that's brilliant to hear. Thanks, Colum. And finally, you know, this is a very popular course, and as I mentioned at the top of the call, we're actually going to run this for the first time in Kildare. So we're hoping to attract people from the Kildare, Meath and Wicklow counties to that intake, and we'll also be running it in Dublin. And I suppose that is a reflection of how popular the course is. But if there's anyone on the call here who's kind of sitting on the fence, they're not quite sure, you know, perhaps they have an idea that they'd like to implement within their own organization, or they're nursing a business idea that they don't think deserves to see the light of day, but they're still curious and that's why they're here. What might you advise them to do next, Marie? Can you cast your mind back to yourself pre-application?
God, do you mean in the context of the application itself?
Yeah, like what gave you that final push?
For me, it was when I read the course description and you know, thinking about the experience that I had gained over multiple years and across multiple different kind of sectors within IT. I felt that, and I think Gemma, it was Gemma who said, it spoke to me. It leapt off the page. All of my career, and I suppose particularly in project management sense, I've always been about problem solving, trying to figure out routes to solutions, looking at things differently, and knowing how to get there. And the description of, I think the mix for me, that was the key bit, the mix of both the practical and the tangible tools and methodologies, but along with the personal development and leadership piece. And they're the things that appealed to me most. And I have to say, like Colum, I'll be honest and say, look, I hadn't been through formal education for a long time. I'd done a few postgrads, but that this was most relevant for me. And I felt I needed it on my CV to make me more relevant in an interview situation. And I did find that in the subsequent job interviews that I had, I was able to verbalize, you know, modern thinking about approaching problem solving that I hadn't had the skills to do before. And I had all the materials and resources to draw on in that sense. So yeah, that's what appealed to me. Two things, the practical application and the personal development. And I got both of those things from the course, for sure.
Thank you very much. Excellent. Okay, so I'm mindful of the time. Thank you, Marie, Anna, Colum, and Gemma, for your very generous contributions. Really helpful, and I hope our attendees tonight have enjoyed the session. But before we finish, I'd just like to open up the floor to any questions attendees might have, either to the panelists or potentially to members of our education and student recruitment team who are online and here to answer any of your queries. Just to reiterate that the course closes on the 8th of November, and in a change to Springboard recruitment for this course this year, places will be offered on a rolling basis. So it's best to apply early to avoid disappointment should we become oversubscribed. So we have the course running in Kildare and in Dublin. Begins in January, finishes in June. I think it's over 20 short weeks, Monday and Tuesday evenings. And it's €300 for eligible employed applicants. And if you're eligible and unemployed, you may study this course with fully funded fees. So are there no questions? Just a thank you, good chat from interesting people. Well, there you go. Thank you, Michael, for that. It's lovely to hear. And there is another question. Does the content include a presentation to the group or pitch on an idea? And that is from Charlotte. Yes, is the short answer to that question. Rosemary, do you want to provide a bit of detail on what that looks like?
That's exactly what it looks like. They will pitch their ideas. So yes, throughout the modules, presentation skills and the pitch is let's say, an important part of the learning outcomes and the assessment criteria, yes. But it's not as daunting as it sounds. And as the graduates said, with all the supports and that, they'll be well ready for it by the time that time comes.
And it's actually great fun. It is
yes,
fun.
There you go.
Yeah.
You're among friends at that stage.
I'm going to also say there's a little bit of competitiveness. You're in your WhatsApp group going, but in a nice way. It's not never a bad way, but you're just kind of egging everybody on because you've been working so hard on it, and it's just a really good atmosphere, and it's kind of fun in a fun way as well. So you want everybody to be great, but you're here going, okay, we got this, we'll do it. So everybody's behind you, and that's the main thing as well. So nobody's against you, everybody's with you. So
and it's real, you're learning again by doing. So yeah, you gain something from it, and there's no doubt about it. I mean, prior to the pitches that I was involved in, with both of the groups that I worked with, oh my God, like the nerves and the jitters before you do it, and then I suppose the relief when it's done. But it's all about the preparation. You work, you prepare well in advance, and you play to everybody's strength on the team, and yeah, it's an experience, and a good experience, even though it might be scary.
Yeah, I definitely found that. We found it like an incubator. It was a really good, safe space to figure stuff out. Things I didn't even intend to figure out, I figured out because we just were in there, especially the first group, the first project group. I don't know, that connection was much stronger because we did a lot more work together in the first group than even the other two that came after. It's just 3 modules, and you do kind of similar style projects in each one. The first, yeah, I can't even, like, we just all had different roles, but I was really nervous about my role. I was like holding back at one point, and they were like, Gemma, would you ever shake yourself up? We need you to do your thing. And so they did. So, it was really nice. You get encouragement, and you figure out a lot about yourself along the way. Yeah.
Thank you for that. I think that's Charlotte's question asked and answered. Any other questions at all? I appreciate some people might have questions around their eligibility and their status, and I see we did have a question there around residency and its implications for eligibility. So just to let people know that on our website, tcd.ie/tangent, under our postgraduate education section, we do have a Springboard information page, and I will pop it into the chat now, and you will find videos on everything from your personal statement to fees and timetables available there, and a link to the Springboard website itself where you might be able to determine that information before you begin your application. You can also book a callback with typically with our student recruitment officer Jane, who's online, I believe, and is super helpful. And you can pick a time that suits you for a call back to discuss anything confidentially. And you can also just find more information there around our recognition of prior learning policy and what that looks like if potentially you don't have if you've never gone to 3rd level before, where you don't meet the traditional eligibility requirements. So I think we might have another. Yeah, there's Jane. So you can reach Jane at springboard@tcd.ie. And yes, Mike, there will be. So this session is being recorded, and I will be sharing it with everyone who had registered to attend, just in case anyone couldn't make it, mindful that we are targeting people who are hopefully busy adult learners with other priorities on the go at the same time. So that brings us to a close for this evening. I'd just like to once again thank our panel, Marie Clune, Anna Rooney, Colum, Buckley, and Gemma O'Halloran, and of course my colleagues Jane Flanagan and Rosemary Denneher. I hope this has moved the dial for any potential applicants this evening. I certainly want to take up a Springboard course now, but thank you everyone for joining, and hopefully we'll see each other again soon.
Thanks very much. Thanks to the graduates. Great sharing the stories.
No, thank you very much. Seriously, it's brilliant. Really worthwhile. Thank you.
Thank you. Best of luck to everybody.
Yes, best of luck, everyone.
Just apply. Just do it. Go for it. Let it go. Go do it. Take care. Bye.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks a million.
Thanks, guys. Cheers.
Bye-bye.